before I do start asking them questions, I will quickly state our goal is to maybe have this event get to maybe 7:30 Eastern time, so about an hour and a half. But we'll go as long as the questions kind of come, or our panelists need to go live the rest of their evening. But just so you are aware, if for the Q&A, if you do have questions that come up during panelists' discussions or answers to some of our questions, please feel free to use the chat and put them there. We'll come to it either at the end, or if the question is just so damn good, we will get to it pretty quickly. We'd love to hear what you have to ask about and get to those answers. As someone who put the panel together, I do want to say, and having seen all the faculties and programs that you're coming from, it's hard to represent every single program at an event like this. So unfortunately, we did pretty well. There is some diversity here in terms of what fields everybody's coming from, but we aren't representing all the schools. But you will have a chance to meet people from the fields that you're going into, either online or at other events. So, but today's goal is to really talk about academics and well-being and how our students, prepare for that and how they think about those terms in their time at McGill, and not, being from different programs. There's still a lot of ways that their information and their wisdom could be helpful to you. So that's already too much for me. I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to go in order if I see it. So Wu, can you start first, please? You may have lost the mic or the unmute button. Oh, okay. So yeah.
That's absolutely my fault. One sec, Wu. Let me fix that for you. There you go. My apologies.
Perfect. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Hi, my name's Wu, and I will be going into my U2 year in the management faculty, and I started as a U0.
All right, so we will have to allow the others to unmute as well. So Jamie, if you can go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie. I'm currently in my U3 year, completing an honors Bachelor of Arts in Poli-Sci with a double minor in Canadian Studies and Philosophy. And I started as a U0 all the way back in fall of 2019.
Thank you. And Bimi?
Hi, everyone. I'm Vimy. I'm going into my 4th year. So I started in U0 and I'm going into my U3 year. I'm in interdepartmental honors immunology, which is like a smaller program that combines like biochemistry, microbiology, and immunology, physiology, a bunch of sciencey things. Yeah.
That was our way of trying to cover as many science programs with one student. So we tried our best, and hopefully it'll work tonight. And Yuki, can you go ahead next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuki. I just graduated this summer. I'm an international student, and I started as U0. I double majoring psychology and philosophy and minoring behavioral science.
All right, and lastly, Ariel.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ariel. I'm going into my 5th, so U4 year of bioengineering in the Faculty of Engineering, and I started as a U0.
All right, so for the panelists, if you want, if you could take some time to maybe just type that in the chat so those, so our guests can sort of revisit and figure out who's who, that would be great. So as we kind of said, the theme for tonight is to talk about academics and well-being and how students balance that, and specifically how McGill students balance that. So I want to start with, pretty deep and open-ended questions. So I'm already going to thank my panelists for sharing their insight into these things and considering these things maybe for the first time out loud, instead of just going day by day and surviving as a McGill student. We'll go in opposite direction now. So I'll go with Ariel first. So what for you does it mean to balance your academics and your well-being while being a McGill student?
For me, some key points for that is maintaining a healthy level of stress. So obviously school can be a very stressful time, but there's a point where that can be motivating, and then there's a point where that can be debilitating. So some key points I'd say for me is like prioritizing sleeping and eating, which is a big thing that I know can be sometimes overlooked, as well as making time to schedule fun or relaxing activities.
And Yuki? Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry. So for me, I decide my goals based on my plans and regarding my future plans, for example, to graduate schools. And I really need to maintain a healthy mental health and also balancing my academic well-being.
And it worked because you did graduate. So thank you again for sticking around with McGill events the summer of graduation. We know that's a lot of McGill students do that. And it's great to have your insight from all those years of being a student. Vimy, if you can go next. So like I said, what does it mean for you to balance your academics and well-being?
I think for me, it just means being realistic about everything that you can do, because like you can have like a perfect idea of what well-being is, and sometimes that is going to slip a little bit, and you can have a perfect idea of what school is, like doing all your assigned readings, and sometimes that's going to slip a little bit. So I guess just being comfortable in the fact that it's not going to be perfect. And some days you do need to sleep for like 12 hours, and some days you do just need to stay up late and read the thing that you're supposed to read. So I guess being comfortable with the fact that things aren't going to be perfect, and just trying to maintain enough that you're healthy in the two sides of academics and well-being.
And I guess we were having this conversation before. It's not just a two-sided coin. There are a lot of different pieces that sort of play a role, but we are going to sort of look at those two things today as this. But we all know that there's so much else that goes on. Jamie, do you want to go next?
I think for me, it's over the past few years, it's been really important to just slow down and actually process how you're feeling in order to balance accordingly, because we are coming to McGill probably top of your class, very high up in your class, academic achievers, and that's really great. And then you start university and it's a big adjustment. So remembering that you're human and taking time to process not only what's going on in your academic or personal life, but also the fact that you're going through such an important transition period in your life right now. And to just remember that you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. And you're going to end up creating a circle of individuals that you feel safe with, and to make sure that your university experience isn't just all academics all the time, because while academics are important, it's important that you leave a person as well, not just your transcript at the end of the 4 years. So I think it's really important to sit down, process. That's one of my main things I've been able to do to balance the two, because things get really intense, as you'll find out in final season, but it's important to stay present and to really emphasize your need for sleep, for rest, and just being a person, as well as being a university student.
Already great advice. Love it. Woo, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's about kind of finding like the comfortable space within yourself, between kind of putting enough effort into your schoolwork and kind of achieving the results that you want from yourself, all while kind of approaching it with a healthy and happy mind, because burnout is entirely real, and you can't just work constantly. You just need to kind of keep your well-being in check. You need both kind of sides of the scale to be there in order for the longevity of your academic success.
All right. So having sort of looked now at the coin, I want to focus on one side for now. Let's start with academics. That's probably a key reason why a lot of students or a lot of guests are here today. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of you are, I think, at least all in your U3. So you have several years of experience already at McGill. Or no, sorry, U2 as well. Sorry, with Lou, sorry. But definitely some experience already. So I would like to ask, how do you decide your academic goals? And you can think about this as, have they changed from year to year? So if you picture yourself in the place of our guests right now, a month before school starts, what were your thoughts? What were your goals of academic success? Have they changed since then, from semester to semester, even class from class, sort of keeping all that in mind? Yeah, how do you decide your academic goals? We'll go with Wu this time.
Yeah, of course. So I think in my first year when I came, like obviously McGill has quite ridiculous admission standards. We all had to go through that kind of process, and we were all high achievers, getting great marks in all of our classes throughout high school. So when I came into my first year, I personally wanted, straight A's, just exactly as it was back in high school. It was only like just until until the first semester was over that I realized that it wasn't exactly the same as high school. I clearly wasn't kind of achieving like the exact things I wanted. I wasn't getting 100% in maybe every test. Tests were also curved as well, which is something that you'll get used to and something that will become familiar. But that kind of has now evolved into me personally not deciding academic goals by like clear cut letter grades. I personally have just been in the routine by just trying my absolute best that I can in the course with said materials. I try to study as much as I can and understand as much of the material I can and kind of go into the test giving it my best effort. I've come to notice that I can't really be mad at myself at said grade if I give it my absolute all. So therefore, kind of not going into that test thinking, oh, I'm gonna get straight A's, or even the first year was how it has developed for me.
Great. And Jamie?
I think I came into McGill the same way as Lou, having set very high goals for myself, being a high achiever. And your first year of university is always a learning curve. You'll get your first few grades back and they'll either be excellent or you'll realize, okay, maybe things are a bit different than they were in high school, which was definitely the case for me. You definitely learn how to write. When you're in an arts degree, you learn how to write well really quickly in first year if you weren't taught properly before. But I have changed my academic goals as the years have gone by. I find each year they get a little bit less intensive because I realize that there's so much more to your university degree than your academic performance. And you'll even realize that as if you're looking to apply to grad school later on, there's the experiential component and also academic components in a lot of programs. And then as you move through your university degree and look at these internship opportunities and career exploration opportunities, you'll see that academic performance is important, but there's also other aspects as well. And so as I've come to realize that, I've begun to relax a bit of the stress on myself to achieve such high standards. And so I usually have a good idea about how I'm going to do in a course after the first two assessments. I say after the first two because the first one is always like a shot in the dark. It depends on who your TA is, who your professor is, how the grading system works, if the class is curved, how many people are in the class. There's so many different variable factors. So after the first and second assignments, you'll really get an idea of what the grading is like. And then you can cater your assignments or assessments to that grading style. And that's usually how I set my benchmarks for how I want to perform in a class. And another important part about academic targets is if you're not achieving them, it's important to know that you can also find help within your department or within your program as well. And so if you're not achieving your academic targets, you can also find help for them as well.
And we will talk about those specific support systems that do exist around the university, some very specific, some open directly to faculties or some open to all university students. And I do see the chat, the question about curved. Yeah, Wu threw us one there. The whole curve, it does change from faculty to faculty. The Faculty of Management does hotel sort of has that sort of recognition, but other faculties less so. So, but we'll discuss, if that keeps coming up, we'll chat more about it, but typically not the most common thing for all faculties. Vimy, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I guess, yeah, like Wu said, my academic goals have always been to do my best. But I guess like how you define your best can change. So I think maybe in my first year, I was like too hard on myself about what my best was. Like if it wasn't what I wanted, then it wasn't my best. But sometimes your best isn't what you want. It's just that you're tired and in your first year and like had a bad sleep before a quiz or something. I think also it's really important. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's really important to focus on your own academic goals and not anyone else's goals around you, because I think socially in first year, people are very focused on establishing like who they are in a new group of people. So it's best just to focus on yourself and your own academic goals and what your best is. And you don't have to talk about it with your friends if you don't want to. So I guess over the years, my perspective has changed because I genuinely, like, I am not intimidated by other people discussing their academic goals. I'm just confident in my own academic goals and I know what my best is through practice.
All right, and Yuki?
And so I was in the same situation as you guys. So I started with really unrealistic goals. I just want to be at the top of the class. And then I started to realize that I am an international student. I need to adapt myself to the university, to the culture, and also to the English teaching, all the stuff. So I slowly incorporate all those things into my goals. And also I have to take into account my mental health. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the pandemic, and I need to adjust myself to the online course, for example, like last year. And then my goal turns into to improve myself, to get better each time, to establish a good study habit. And I can also adjust my expectations based on the difficulty of the courses. So I think that's really important for a first year student.
And lastly, Ariel, Michael, I hope you're listening. Engineering students, yeah, they have an extra year of studying most of the time. So Ariel, what are your thoughts there?
In terms of deciding goals, I'd say the main thing is choosing goals that are realistic. And like some of the other panelists have mentioned, it might take some time, especially as a first year student, to see what is a realistic goal in the new university setting. Personally, I don't really set style goals, so like a specific letter grade in a course, but try to build more habits that I can implement and serve me over like different classes and years. And another thing I'd say is that over time, it will get easier, at least in my experience, because the more experience you have in your program, you have a better sense of what the expectations are, which will allow you to be more specific in your goals and also more realistic.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to mention, the idea of combining the more time you spend at McGill, the more practice and training you're getting, but also the more specialized you're getting in ideally areas that you're interested in. And sort of that ancient rule of thumb is if it's something you're interested in, typically you will do better in it. So it is kind of nice that, you know, as you're going to harder courses, it's also more likely to be the courses you're genuinely interested in. So very, very important to note. I'll stay on the academics for a quick second. And maybe some of you have already kind of mentioned, you know, maybe hinted at perhaps what your answer would be here. But as we've already kind of said, it's been a couple of years since you were that first year or first semester student. But if you were able to travel back in time and just give a piece of advice relating to those academic expectations, what would be sort of the advice that you would tell your past self? Not to say that your past self would ever listen to you, you know, they probably wouldn't. But what would you try to tell yourself in the past if you could? We can do it in reverse. So Ariel, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I'd say in first year, I would get easily upset or discouraged if I got a grade back that didn't meet my goals or standards. So the advice I would give is that if it seems like you're off track from your goals or not reaching your own expectations, you can recover. I personally have failed a midterm but got an A in a course. So my advice would be to focus on the big picture and utilize resources, reach out if you feel like you're going off track to help you recover.
Did you go get an ice cream for the fail?
No, it's too stringent. It has to be 30% or lower on a midterm with 15% or more. I didn't fail that bad.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I guess. I don't know what the correct response is there. If you find a link to that ice cream place, you can put it in the chat for future, I think, is it just engineering students? I can't fully remember how the ice cream deal works.
It is for everybody, but yeah, Frostbite is run by engineering.
Again, we're not hoping for your failure, but in case it does happen, sometimes an ice cream is waiting for you at the end. So Yuki, yeah, if you want to go ahead. So what kind of advice would you share to yourself if you had the chance relating to the academic piece?
I'm also going to just tell myself not to be too frustrated and anxious about like a little lower grade in a small test, because when I was in my first year, when I get a lower grade in just like a small quiz, I stuck into the rumination and negative thinking circles and a negative cognitive mode. So I just want to say that don't be too overwhelmed by it, because one course only takes 3 credits out of 120, and a quiz only takes a tiny bit of your cumulative GPA. And when you look back after 4 years, it's just nothing. But at that time, it was too overwhelming for you. So maybe just to reverse your current thinking mode and to get out of that rumination and think about the big picture, as Ariel said, is really important. Yeah.
Reminds me of my time, how much time you spend calculating what you could potentially get in a course, as opposed to actually just studying and just taking the time to do all those calculations. We all do it. It's okay.
Yeah, I did the same.
It's a safe space here, but it's a good way to think of it when you think of all 120 or even 150 credits that you have to do sometimes. It's a great view. Vimy, if you want to go next.
Yeah, I think I would tell myself in first year to sleep more. That'd be my biggest advice, would be to sleep more, because you're balancing academics and making friends, and especially in residence, there's always something to go do. So I think, like, grades aside, like, you won't be happy in class if you aren't sleeping enough. So sleep enough, no one will care. Just sleep in or go to bed early. Yeah, everything's better when you sleep enough.
If there are any parents on the call, I'm sure they appreciate that. Jamie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I would say my piece of advice would be that you don't have to prove yourself every single minute of every single day. There's not someone monitoring every single second of your university experience to make sure you're being as productive as you possibly can be in every aspect of the term. It's important to achieve whatever your level of success is throughout your university career, but it's also important to just enjoy the ride. A lot of my friends who are graduated and then moved on in life have always said, like, even when I was coming in, like, this is going to be some of the best years of your life. You need to make sure you're enjoying it while you're going through it. And sometimes it's really easy to lose sight of that, especially when stress gets bad during midterms or finals, or you haven't slept in 2 days because you've been burning the midnight oil in the Red Path basement. But Montreal is also a great city, and so I would have told myself to, make sure to explore that as well. I've been able to do so, spending summers here between school years, but the McGill bubble, as you'll learn, is a great place to be. But there's also so much more of Montreal that you're going to be able to experience throughout your time here, and a lot of really great little neighborhoods or cute little niches you can check out as well. So that's another big thing I wasn't told enough before I started.
If you get through the 6 months of winter, and maybe being generous with the 6 months, you might as well spend the summer here, because it is a fun place to be. Lastly, Woo.
Yeah, and like with what everyone said, I think like kind of the best way to kind of prepare yourself for that, more of the academic side, is to kind of prepare yourself, and as well as be resourceful when it comes to your academics for this upcoming year. One of the things that I would say that has helped me the absolute most when it comes to academic goal setting is actually just getting to learn about what courses are kind of ahead of you. And like, because there are some notorious courses that are harder than others, or even there are midterms that are actually substantially harder than others. I found that out kind of throughout my experience here and my time. But I think one of the best things to do is talking to your advisors as well as past students about this. That would put you miles ahead and just make you a more informative person that would help you succeed in that aspect.
All right, so I think I appreciate all the advice about the academic piece. So I do want to take some time and talk about the well-being part. and everything that really represents, because it really does, it includes quite a bit. So thinking about, and this is maybe the toughest question, do you think about setting well-being goals? Do you specifically think about things? Maybe it just comes naturally, from in given moments. But if you do think about setting well-being goals, how do you come up with them? How do you achieve them? And even then, have they changed over time as well? Having been at McGill for a couple of years. So Wu, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So talking about kind of well-being goals, obviously well-being and emotions are not the easiest things to keep track of, like in terms of metrics wise. We can't necessarily give ourselves a rating of 1 to 10 how happy we are every minute of the day. So I personally don't really necessarily set concrete well-being goals for myself. That's not something that I actually do. But to kind of like help with that, I actually just actively monitor how I'm feeling kind of throughout the day. So when it comes to like the school days, maybe I've been studying for a couple hours and I can kind of feel it getting to me. Like I'm feeling a little tired, a little burnt out. My eyes are hurting. It's really important to be self-conscious of kind of those emotions that I'm feeling, that I'm tired. So kind of with that in mind, I'm able to like actively kind of combat that kind of emotion that I'm feeling by like knowing that, okay, maybe this is my time to take a little break. I'm going to go out into the living room and talk with my roommates, because that's personally how I keep up my well-being. So yeah, with that being said, there's no real metrics in my mind, but I think it's really important to kind of keep monitoring yourself throughout the day to see how you feel and act upon those things that you're actually feeling.
Jamie, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to be giving you advice on how to make sure your well-being's in check. I should really also follow my own advice, but we're all university students. We've all burnt out before. It's normal. I'll just preface that, like, it's normal to experience those kind of feelings. But I tend to see well-being goals more like New Year's resolutions that I end up breaking the day after I set them, if that makes sense, because university is so difficult to predict, not even the university experience itself, but things happen in life. Your personal life changes, your academic performance is changed, everything changes as you grow up and as things happen. And so I would recommend generally prioritizing your mental and physical well-being. And like Wu said, checking in on yourself from time to time, making sure you're in a position to handle what's happening at the moment and what's coming. But also leaving room for adjustment in case things are to happen, because we all want to plan every single second of our day, especially when you want to study all the time or make sure you're going to be successful in a given course, for example. But things happen, and if you don't leave time to adjust or time to rest and recollect, then you're just going to experience burnout in the end. And my goals have definitely changed since starting at McGill when it comes to my well-being, from taking a day off to rest in first year, which wasn't ideal at the time, to now just taking a while each day to just calm down, not have to look at a computer screen to read for class, and just be present.
Great advice. And Vimy, go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned before, sleeping is really important to me. So I think one goal that I really try to stick to is having around 8 hours of sleep. So yeah, that's a pretty hard and fast rule for me. Also because I know like scientifically that it's really important. So I'm like, well, like if I didn't sleep this much, I can justify it to myself by knowing that everything I do will be worse if I don't sleep that well. That's like a bad paraphrase. I can give you citations if you want. But but yeah, besides that, I think my well-being goals are pretty fluid. I think I reflect a lot on how I'm feeling physically and emotionally. So I make sure, like, I know myself and I know that I'm pretty extroverted. I really need to hang out with people. So I study with my friends. I have study groups with my friends. I go for runs with my friends. I try to like build things into my day so that it's just natural. And I think a lot of people do that naturally as well. Like, this is obviously not groundbreaking advice that you haven't heard before, but doing things with your friends that you have to do anyway tends to make them a lot more enjoyable. And also, I'm kind of like a border collie, like I really need to run around every day. So I make sure that I do that as well. Yeah, obviously this wouldn't apply to everyone, but I guess the overarching advice would be to sleep enough and then reflect on how you're feeling when you do different things and make sure that you do things that make you happy.
All right. And Yuki?
So I tend to get really anxious about my academic life. So one well-being goal is to tackle this anxiety. And one strategy I would use is a positive awareness. So when you get anxious about things, you tend to just think about negative things about yourself and negative appraisal. But when you have awareness of positive side of yourself and your life, you tend to get less anxious. And also, as Winnie said, social connection is really important. And as you are with your friends or in your social circle, you get less anxious and less focused on your negative things. And also, one thing is to take a break and to pause for a minute when you are too overwhelmed or you're too stressed, too pressured. Yeah. And there's a lot of resources about psychological well-being at McGill, and I think we'll mention it afterwards.
Yep, definitely we'll bring those up soon. We'll just end quickly with Ariel. Go ahead.
For my well-being, I don't necessarily have like specific goals in place. However, something I do practice is when I do have, I guess, an area of my well-being that I want to improve on or something I want to implement, I try to make it as easy for myself to follow through with as possible. So for example, one thing I wanted to work out more or incorporate that into my routine. So I found like signing up for a fitness class would encourage me to go because I've dedicated myself to be in that time and place. And friends can also help with that as well. So make plans with friends or include them and let them know what your plans are to have that accountability for your well-being goals. So yeah, setting reminders and like building it into your schedule really helps me to follow through and achieve them.
Perfect, thank you. And I see Vimy is bringing in, I think, something that can help also for well-being goals, pet therapy. And I know definitely there's actually something that will probably come up later today to actually think about that. And even just to quickly say, because having or hearing all of you talk about your well-being goals or things that you consider, it can also be independent things. It could just be like, I want to read something that has nothing to do with my school. I want to read a book. I want to read fiction, nonfiction, or a poem, whatever it might be, just to disconnect completely. Maybe it's to put on a 2-hour movie that turns your brain off and just allows you to sit there and sort of relax and sort of regroup yourself. So definitely a lot of different approaches to sort of the well-being. I want to dive now into specifics. So, that are sort of designed to maybe your own faculties or programs, things that you've experienced or services that you've used that have helped you, because of the program that you're in. So I think if we start sharing a few, as I said, acronyms, initialisms, things like that, we can definitely reach out and put them in the chat as well, maybe so that our listeners can sort of maybe do some searches and to find these things. The services that we're going to talk about for the next hour perhaps, they're not secret, they're not hidden. They do have web pages or they do have links. Yes, maybe the McGill or university websites in general can be hard to maneuver, but the information is there, the resources are there, but we'll give you a chance to hear about some of them today, right now. So let's see, who do we want to start with? What kind of programming do we want to think about? So I'm going to start with Ariel. Let's think about the Faculty of Engineering. So there are a lot of support systems or services that exist for engineering students. And I was curious if you'd like to highlight some of them, especially the ones that can help you in terms of your academics or well-being, or maybe even both. So what are some of the key ones that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I'd say one key one is the McGill Engineering Student Center, or MESC. And they run like a few different programs, but this is like the primary hub for engineering students for advising, awards, internships, career help. So under their wing, they have a peer tutoring service called EPTS, which is a drop-in tutoring for first and second year engineering courses, which is run by students who have taken those courses. So that's a great resource. They also tend to hold midterm or final review sessions. And a second branch of MESC is the Engineering Career Center, or ECC, which hosts workshops has info on internships, also runs an event called Tech Fair, which is like a career fair they hold once a semester where you can meet some prospective employers. So MESC and all of everything that's under them, I'd say, is one. And then the second main resource in engineering is the departmental student societies. So the Engineering Undergraduate Society, or EUS, is the main student society for all of engineering. They run engineering focused clubs and design teams that are great opportunities to get involved. And then the departmental student societies. So in my case is the Bioengineering Student Society. They're also great. They host social events, and it's a great way to build community, and also a great way to connect with upper year students to get students experiences specifically in your program for like courses or internships.
All right, yeah, there's definitely, I don't know if somebody can track it down, but links to all the student associations that do exist, or department student associations, so that, or societies, you know, that students can, or guests can sort of look around and see what is available, because there are quite a bit. So that covers a lot of engineering. Thank you for that. Now we'll definitely come back to a few things as well that exist in the Faculty of Engineering. But let's learn about another faculty. So we have two guests today that have experience with the Faculty of Arts. So I would love to hear what the, being our biggest faculty, there has to be some type of service that exists to help and support our students. So let's hear a bit about those. Jamie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so a big tool is in the Faculty of Arts is Arts Oasis. They offer a lot of academic planning services. So if you're going into your first year and you want to see what your course load is going to be like with the courses you selected, or if you're interested in career degree planning, you can meet with an advisor and they can give you their perspective on the courses. They're usually very knowledgeable about most subject areas, and they've been quite helpful. I use them this year because I'm graduating this year to make sure I don't overload myself with grad apps. We also have like career planning services through Arts Oasis, and they also have academic advising. They can help you with more generalized questions, or they can refer you to your departmental advisors. So just to clarify, there's the Faculty of Arts and then different departments within the Faculty of Arts. And your department is generally the program you major in or minor in. So for example, I'm part of the Department of Political Science because I'm in a political science degree. So when I go and have questions about my degree, specifically, if you're in honors, joint honors, major or minor programs, they usually have different professors or different resource individuals that you can contact and ask them questions, and they're usually more than happy to help. I've had advice from professors on how to find different internships. Once you're getting into your later years, you can do internships for credit and then write a thesis on it. And if there's any kind of that information you're interested in, they can help you out with that. There's also undergraduate student associations, like Ariel had mentioned, for engineering. It's AUS, so Arts Undergraduate Society. A roommate of mine was on the executive, so I know the in and outs of that thing now, but there's a lot of different student services, peer tutoring. You can get jobs on campus through AUS. You can get different executive positions through AUS. And then there's also the departmental executives, which offer their own peer tutoring services, team building events or social events, and answers to any of your questions. But I think throughout my time at McGill personally, I've definitely taken advantage of the departmental advisors, emailing them an annoying amount of times, because I just like to be certain that I'm not taking the wrong courses and that the courses I'm taking are going to enable me to graduate on time. So that's definitely the resource I found the most helpful. But the Arts Society has a lot available because there are so many of us.
Yuki, I do have specific questions for you, but I'm going to ask Jamie a quick follow-up. because you are in an honors program, and we've been talking about academic goals or thoughts that our incoming students have considered. I'm sure there are at least a few of you on the call who are like, I'm going into honors program, whatever major you are already considering. And even though every program department has its own different honors rule, I was wondering, Jamie, if you can kind of share your experience of, because you didn't start in honors program, that's sort of a rule at McGill, and no one starts directly in an honors program. Your experience sort of going through that process of then finally getting into an honors program. How did it work? How many years did you have to do before becoming an honors student? You want to share some stuff there. Again, this won't be a clear-cut example for all programs, but it will be pretty close.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs with very competitive honors programs. Psychology is the one that first comes to mind, and that's completely different from my experience in poli-sci. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go onto the McGill Faculty of Arts website and go into your department for the specifics on what is required for an honors program. And that's usually in your degree planner or degree program brochure. But most arts departments have you go into honors beginning in your U2 year or after your U1 year. And depending on the requirements, you either have to seek departmental approval. So you would go on to Arts Oasis, go into academic advising, pick the department you're in, and then email the honors advisor and ask. And they have access to your transcript. They can help you with any of those kinds of questions. And then when you go, you would just go on Minerva before that school year starts. You have to go on Minerva anyway when you select your major if you're not starting in U1 after your U0 year. And you would just switch from major concentration to honors concentration. And if it's approved by the department, it'll show up on your transcript in your Minerva. And if it's not approved, then they will reach out to you and you would go from there. Typically, it's a pretty straightforward process, provided you've met the requirements. But again, as I had mentioned, there's a lot of departments within arts that are quite competitive when it comes to honors. So it becomes more complicated then.
No, it's a great summary. Like I said, it's different for every program. So you can definitely check out your websites if that is something you're considering. So Yuki, I know you're also an art student. You just graduated with the BA. If there's more you'd like to share about the Oasis department, you can definitely do so. But I am also curious to know, what was it like being a double major student? So especially when it comes to dealing with advisors. So now you're, a major in psychology and a major in philosophy. How did that work? Those are, two very different departments. What was that like?
So I can definitely go to find the arts advisor because they're in charge of arts, but I can also go to the philosophy advisor and also psychology advisors. So different department have their own advisors and you can just reach out to them. And yeah, and also I want to add up to the honors topic. So I was in psychology, but also since I have another major and another minor, I don't have much credit for the honors degree. So I applied for the honor equivalent program. So I don't know if that's only a thing in psychology, but the honors equivalent program is for students who can't reach out the high standard for the honors degree, or you don't have much credit for the honors. So you can also definitely check out for that. And also I want to add up to the resources. Writing Center is one service that I find really useful for me because if you're in arts, you have to write a lot of papers and essays, and writing centers can really help you with content, logic, grammars, and everything with writing. And they're all student tutors. I think a lot of them are master's degree or in their PhD degree. So that's really helpful. And also there's a lot of resources from the library. I once attended one of their conference, and their library staff teach me a lot of things about how to use the online resources and also the offline resources. So definitely check out for that.
I'll just jump in. I think it was good timing because the question that just came in, so especially relating to getting services for those who maybe English is not their first language. So yeah, and the link was just put up there. Thank you, Chris. Writing Center, yes, definitely a useful place. And this isn't just for those who English isn't their first language. Maybe you didn't have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of writing in high school. And this might be something new to you in the university level. So take advantage of the services when you can, if you need them. So I see Wu getting a little restless. I think he wants to jump in and talk about management, so I'm not going to stop him. So Wu, what are some of the services that are available at Des Hotel that sort of help you with your academic or well-being?
Yeah, at Desatel, I have taken use of the career and academic advisors the absolute most. Funny enough, it echoes kind of what all the panelists were saying, but I think within Desatel, because it is also generally a smaller faculty, my advisors have been absolute saints for me. They've been kind of like supportive all throughout the entire journey. I think it was actually for the very first year in Desatel, you actually have a mandatory meeting with an academic advisor, I believe within your first couple weeks of actually being in school. They're able to kind of do this because we are a smaller faculty, and all the advisors in there, I've spoken to many of them, are incredibly intelligent, and they're just there to help you. I remember in my first meeting, my advisor, Jennifer, they're truly there to kind of get to know who I am, understand my situation, understand my aspirations, and they're there with you every step to try and help you succeed. It's not only this kind of initial meeting where they're here to help, but it's throughout your entire degree that you can check in on them, and you can kind of request appointments that help, that kind of, you can get the answers to topics that you want. So kind of for me, for my first year, it was kind of about course selections in my first year. Oh, like, will this course be incredibly tough? Do you think it's manageable with like this many math courses and this many management courses? They're incredibly knowledgeable, and they've been dealing with these management specific courses for such a long time that they have in-depth information about every single one of them. So they were able to kind of guide me through that throughout my first years. And now that I'm coming to my later years, I've kind of turned more over into the career advisors who are there to kind of help prepare me for life after school. This kind of includes helping build my resume, like the actual PDF itself, as well as connecting me with alumni who are kind of in the field that I'm looking for, as well as helping me prepare for interviews by actually conducting mock interviews with me. I think the advisors within the management department are incredibly useful. Do you want me to talk about the MUS as well?
We'll come back to it. I don't want I know Vimi's dealing with summer COVID. I don't want her to fall asleep on us. So I'll bring Vimi in quickly because I do want to hear about science. But don't forget, Wu, I will come back. So Vimi, I know yourself too, you have some experience with advisors, and you've used some science, or you've used some services in the Faculty of Science. So do you mind sharing a bit of your experience with our guests?
Yeah, so I've made sure to meet with my academic advisors because I'm kind of paranoid that I'm taking the wrong classes all the time. I meet with them like once a year or once per semester, which is good. That being said, my program advisor isn't available for actual meetings because he does a bunch of other things too. So I've been emailing with him for a couple of years for my tiny little program. But honestly, I think one of the best resources that you can take advantage of is older students in your program because they will have seen their friends or themselves make mistakes and then correct them. They'll be able to tell you which courses to choose from if you have a bunch of different options, like based on what you're more interested in or what your study habits are. So maybe that's a good unofficial resource to use. I know a lot of departments and faculties, also the student associations. For instance, I'm part of the microbiology and immunology undergraduate student association, and we have like info sessions for different courses or like career options. And I know that a bunch of different departments across McGill have students that do that as well. So I guess looking for the smaller student run things can be helpful because you'll get insider info from people who have taken the courses already. And that can be really helpful.
Which segues, I think, back to Wu very nicely in terms of the MUS. So Wu, do you want to take away with, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So the MUS is the Management Undergraduate Society. So within the MUS, they kind of hold their own services, as well as there's an umbrella of clubs that are under the MUS as well. I'll start off with the MUS and a couple of their most useful services I've personally found. So within the MUS, they provide free peer tutoring. That is actually where the tutors are third and fourth year students who have verifiably gotten a great grade in that course, who are able to really kind of teach you the topic from a student's perspective. You know, we can have a professor talk about said topic for your hour-and-a-half lecture, but it can be a little different in experience when you're getting kind of taught by a student who went exactly what you were going through, who actually sat in the seats rather than was up there teaching, and maybe can explain it to you in different ways. So I've personally found that service incredibly useful, just because it's a fresh perspective on the topic. The second service I've used directly from the MUS is when it comes to final season, what they have is like crash courses for the courses that happen that semester. So they'll hold like 3-hour in-person sessions where they're going over the entire material of said course, of the core management courses that that everyone has to take, so that you can kind of like fill in all the gaps that you may have forgotten about, as well as it's just an extra supplemental to just studying. So I found those two very useful, and both of those are completely free as well. Under the MUS, I want to talk about just there's a lot of clubs under the MUS that kind of help with your academic, your well-being, and career goals that I've personally found. MUS has a lot of clubs, a lot of big clubs kind of within the specific industries, kind of under the management faculties, such as finance, consulting, accounting, sustainability. And you're able to join those clubs and become active members as well as executives to help within those three buckets that I talked about: academic, well-being, and career. And when it comes to academics, I found that kind of being a part of those clubs and their specific topics, you can really kind of learn more about the topics that you may actually be learning in class, which will help you for your future in kind of more advanced classes within those topics. When it comes to well-being, I found that these clubs and their events have great social interactions and in big group settings, maybe not necessarily for the introverts, but the extroverts. This is where you can actually thrive and shine. This is where, like, in all these group settings, you guys can come together to work on cases or come to learn together about a company on like a hiring session. I think that's also important. And lastly, when it comes to career-wise, all these clubs are partnered with some sort of local institutions and local companies where they will put on hiring events, information events, and you'll get kind of a special treatment when it comes to the hiring process as well. So it's very informative, very useful to kind of take use of all of those.
A lot of information. MUS does quite a bit. I'm hoping that their webpage is up to date. That you kind of reminded me of another sort of program that exists that is student run with some support from staff, that is pretty interesting for both engineers and science students, especially if you're doing U0, and that's Fresca. Now we can share the link there, but Ariel, did you want to chat about that a little bit?
Sure. So Fresca is a drop-in peer support for U0 and U1 science and math courses. And this is run by students who are called team mentors, which are students who have done well in the course, and upper year students who have done well in the course, like in the previous year. In pre-COVID years, this was run in one of the main cafeterias, and they would have it, I believe, a couple of days a week, where you could drop by in a collaborative working environment, meet with these peer mentors. Sometimes the TAs or profs would drop in as well. And you could come do your homework with your friends and ask for help. I personally was a mentor for intro to chem courses. And yeah, these team mentors, if your course has one, are just like an additional resource you have beyond like the TAs.
And Vivi, I think you yourself also have some experience with that. So maybe if you have more to share about that, that's great. But maybe also talk about how helpful it is to have students supporting students and why that was important for you.
Yeah, so in my first semester of first year, I had a terrible background in chemistry from my high school. Like my high school was terrible at chemistry, basically. And I came to McGill and I was like, oh my gosh, everyone knows chemistry and I don't. But it was fine because I talked to the team mentors. Oh my gosh, which stands for like Tomlinson's engagement something. It's basically the people who did well in the class the year or 2 years before you. I should really know the acronym because I am them now, but basically they're students who did well in the course and can help you do well in the course as well. And that basically turned around my chemistry classes for me, and it was very helpful. Yeah, and so that was really important for me as a student because it helped me understand the material, because they will answer your questions, and it's basically just another student who is a year older than you and can give you tips and tricks for approaching the material and understanding the professor's teaching styles and stuff like that. And now I am a team mentor. I've team mentored for like 5 different science classes. So all of them have been very different, but I really enjoy explaining the material to other students who are struggling. And honestly, it kind of usually transitions from an academic conversation to a well-being conversation, because students often just want to figure out not only what maybe answering a specific question about biochemistry or whatever, but also they just want to know what a good park is to go for a walk in between classes and stuff like that. So it's been a really meaningful way to one, learn chemistry, 2, connect with students, and 3, share my favorite parks to walk in with other students.
That's great. And so we just got an interesting question in the chat, and it was specific for Wu, but I think I'll have all of you answer it to maybe just quickly sort of share what the workload is like. If you can think back to that U0 year or U1, if you started as U1, in terms of how much free time you have to think about clubs. Now, maybe Wu, you can answer that question, but also maybe talk about Ask McGill very quickly to sort of share what that is in terms of students maybe finding clubs or what that's like. And then quickly say, how much free time or how many clubs should you consider maybe in that first semester, if any. Maybe there's someone who's on the opposite end of this.
Yeah, of course. So I think in your first year, your U0 or U1 year, whatever your first year is actually the absolute best time to explore courses or explore clubs, that is. As a part of the management faculty, you will be actually getting regular emails throughout, especially at the start of the year, I believe, regarding these clubs, and they'll be right there in your email inbox. Apart from that, you're also going to be kind of, when you look at the MUS website, you'll see a list of clubs, and then they have their Facebook and Instagram pages that you can stay updated with, because at the start of kind of every semester, they'll have their own recruitment round or just information rounds. When it comes to this first year in clubs, I highly suggest you get active within as many clubs as you can. Your academic load in these first couple years is not the toughest, and you'll have like kind of more free time relative to your upper years. So I personally started off by being just a general member in, I believe, 3 clubs. That's what it was. Being a general member doesn't mean you have any significant time commitment to any team or whatnot, but you're still going to be invited to all their information sessions, maybe company information sessions, as well as maybe more specific training sessions, such as the McGill Investment Club's investment committee, where you can learn how to financial model as well as prepare comparables. Being a general member doesn't mean that you have any commitment. So you can kind of come in and out as you please within all these multiple clubs. So what I found is after doing that for the first, I guess 2 years is what I did. I kind of honed in on some of the clubs that I really enjoyed and wanted to kind of continue with or kind of get involved with even more to an executive level. So with that being said, I personally found my home with the McGill Social Business Network. It's kind of a consulting group with nonprofit organizations in the Montreal area. And with that being said, after kind of being a general member with them for a couple of years and working my way up, I decided to kind of go all in with them. And now I'm the president of the club. So it works out nicely that way.
Congrats. So that's for management. So we got the magic number 3 as a starting point. Again, that will be different to everyone's workload and then how they sort of handle their time. Jamie, what would you say for the Faculty of Arts as an art student? How many clubs were you sort of looking at? How many did you try? How many did your friends try? What's your experience?
Yeah, so I kind of had a bit of a different experience in my first year. I spent my first semester, I've been working at least part-time since I started university. So I've been working and in school. So in my first semester, I didn't get too involved with clubs because I wanted to make sure I was able to handle a course load and a workload. And then after my first semester, I started to dabble in different clubs. So if you want to get involved right away, that's a great way to meet people and a great way to make friends. And I kind of wish I did that sometimes, but I also am glad I took the time to make sure that my work schedule was compatible with the availability of other clubs. At that time, that was what I needed. But I got involved with 2 clubs in my second semester. And in second year, I was in 4. Third year, I was in 3, and now I just manage 1 and am an exec in another. And then I work 2 jobs and do volunteer research on the side. So it kind of varies. I have friends who are in 3 clubs, a couple exec positions within those clubs. I have some friends who aren't in any clubs but work full-time while going to school. So I can't really say there's a general one-fits-all number, but I would recommend trying at the bare minimum 2 different clubs within your first year to see how things are, and then based on your own personal situation, adapt from there.
Oh, that's perfect. Maybe we can take this one in the writing, but Jamie, if you want to see the question about working, and if other panelists have some experience with that, because all of you come in with different responsibilities, especially some of you. I will just quickly state in terms of visa, please speak with International Student Services, depending on your situation, how many hours you are allowed to work as a full-time student, because time can be different based on citizenship status. But Yuki, for yourself, for Faculty of Arts, what was the club experience like for you? That sounds like a weird sentence to say. Yeah, student clubs and thinking about that, what were you looking at?
I was in a student club, one student club for the first year, and then another student club for the second year. So I tend not to stay in just one club for many years. I may switch between clubs, and I maintain only one club per year because I want to prioritize my study and doing volunteer or research. Yeah, and I think it depends. A lot of people are in none of the clubs, and I think they're doing fine because they have their own friend circles. And also a lot of people are doing part-time jobs and doing volunteers and research. I think it depends on what do you want to prioritize.
Great advice. And Vimy, for the Faculty of Science, if you're thinking about clubs, what was was there a recommended number? Did you have a number? Did your friends have numbers? What was that like?
I think I wouldn't recommend a specific number of clubs to anyone because everyone's experience of how heavy a workload is or other commitments, etc., varies a lot. In my first semester, I was on the ski team, so that took up a lot of my time until I injured myself, and then I joined clubs. So I have had a really good experience with specifically one club that I founded, actually, but that was a huge commitment. But you don't have to do that. You can join clubs and you can join an executive. You can volunteer with a variety of organizations. I think that joining the student association for your program, once you've found a program that you're passionate about, can be really fun as well. And I also recommend maybe not even joining McGill clubs, but finding things to do around the city so that you are outside of the McGill bubble and making an effort to understand the culture of the city of Montreal, which you'll be living in / live in right now. Yeah, I recommend trying to do things that make you think about other people a bit, because it can be a bit of an echo chamber of stressed students sometimes on campus. So yeah.
I do want to follow up. So as someone who spoke to a lot of prospective students at my time at McGill, I did always say, you were able to create a club, but obviously I knew that that was a lot of work. But I have to know, if you don't mind sharing, what was the club that you wanted to create? Because we do have a lot. So I want to know what was missing and what did you establish?
Sure. Well, my club will be open for new volunteers, so I'll just take this as an opportunity to sell my club. But basically, I started volunteering at the Open Door Montreal, which is a homeless shelter on Park. So a 5-minute walk from campus. I started volunteering there right after the pandemic started in 2020. And I really enjoyed the experience. It was really meaningful to me, and I saw how much of a difference I could make just cutting vegetables in the kitchen of a homeless shelter or folding clothing, and interacting with the clients and the intervention workers there really took me outside of my stress about quizzes and really grounded me. Yeah. So I also noticed during the summer there that there were not enough volunteers ever at the shelter. And I also noticed when I was at McGill that many students didn't know how to start volunteering in their community. So I founded a club with a really long name, McGill Students for the Open Door Montreal, to recruit, train, and schedule volunteers at the homeless shelter. So if you're looking for something to do, we're also going to be recruiting for execs in the fall, but basically we schedule volunteers for shifts of as low as like 2 hours twice a month at the homeless shelter. There's a variety of positions. It's really fun. So yeah, that's my club.
I'm never against a personal plug because that sounds amazing. That's congrats to you on getting that started. So I'll just quickly twist. I'll go to the engineering now. So we've already kind of had it in the chat. How many hours? How many courses do you have every semester for an engineering student? How do you have time to do a club? So for an engineering student, what is the are you doing clubs? How many are you doing?
I'd say if you're just starting out and you want to take a more involved role in the club, I'd say start with focusing on 1 or maybe 2 if you're going to be a general member. Personally, I've been lucky to be able to take a reduced course load these past couple of years, just because the way the bioeng curriculum had worked out, and I also had some like advanced standing credits. So currently I find like 2 clubs would be, I guess, like a max if you want to take on a greater role. Yeah, that's been my experience at least. And in engineering, there's a lot of engineering specific clubs if that's something that interests you, as well as design teams, which is something specific to engineering. So engineering design teams, there's like a bio design team, concrete canoe, bridge building teams, rocket team, the ones that make a bunch of like electric race cars and stuff. So if you're interested in that in engineering, that's something I would recommend checking out if you want to be part of like a bigger project.
It's a very simple naming process. Whatever the club is named, that's usually what you're building. And I've seen their stuff is all over the engineering buildings, and they're pretty cool. And McGill wins competitions sometimes, even international competitions. So if you are interested, and just to quickly state, those aren't just for engineering students. I will say, if you are interested in that type of stuff, they do take students from all faculties. So you're not, it's not just for engineering students. There's a certain type of club that I'd like to talk about, and I think it's Yuki, I think you have some experience with this, but there are a lot of student associations that are based on cultural backgrounds. And please, anyone on the panel who has some experience with this, please feel free to share. But Yuki, I know you do, and I was curious, what led you to finding that kind of association? What did you get from that? Like, what were the benefits? And like, would you recommend that to other international students or students from cultural backgrounds that would maybe want to connect to students from the same background?
Yeah, so I was in the Chinese Student Association. So I found out that from my friends, because like we have a Facebook group and we're all from the same cultural background. And I know there's a lot of other same student association. It really helped me with like adapting to a totally different culture. And they can also provide me a lot of help with my academic life or like just my life in Montreal. So I think it's really helpful if you want to reach out to your student association in your own culture group. And one thing they really helped me is that they actually picked me up at the airport when I first came into Montreal, which is really, really helpful for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Everyone loves to be picked up at the airport, and especially if it's your first time in Montreal, to get connected right away to someone from McGill. I can only imagine how beneficial that is. Thanks for sharing. I want to sort of pivot back to the academic piece. So we talked a lot about academic support specifically to these faculties, but I do want to mention there is a type of service that is open to all faculties, and students can sign up for either to be the tutor or to be tutored. So I was just wondering if any of the panelists wanted to talk about their experiences with tutorial services. So this is another service that exists, again, for all faculties across the university. I think maybe Jamie, you had some experience with that?
Yeah, I took an economics course that I found exceptionally difficult. It's an infamous arts course for all you guys entering arts. It's called Econ 208. It's an interesting course, but you learn a lot. It's a very interesting course. But I happened to be struggling after the first midterm and really wanted to do well on the final. So I enlisted in the tutorial services and actually finished a class with an A. Prices aren't super outrageous considering if you look online, private tutors will charge you over $50 an hour for these kinds of supports, whereas I think it was 18 or something like that when I registered at the time. You negotiate your meeting times, your payment methods, and everything with your tutor one-on-one. And it's quite an easy experience. If they're not helpful at all, you could always submit a complaint to the tutorial services, but I have yet to meet anyone or have any personal experiences that weren't helpful.
Because I'm looking at the time, and I know we're quickly running out, and there are a lot more things that I can talk about, but I'm also seeing questions show up in the chat. We got some questions about social media use or where people get information, and I know some of you have experience with how you get support from other students and maybe what platforms. So there's two ways of sort of viewing this. McGill staff will send out information, and I know when you are admitted to McGill, there is that Facebook entrance group. And we do use a lot of emails. So when my panelists have said like emails, like, yes, you'll be bombarded with emails, but it does pay off sometimes to just scroll through them quickly. Maybe take a Sunday morning with coffee and just slowly go through them all and see if there's anything that piques your interest. But I was curious if any of the panelists could talk about maybe more the student related platforms that come up. Like, how do you connect to other students? How do you work with student groups and find peers? Like, what are some of the platforms that McGill students are still using? I don't know necessarily what order to go in, but maybe Vimy or Wu has his hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the big things to highlight, especially, I don't know, well, I guess before COVID as well, but with COVID and just after it, one of the biggest things that have been developed is kind of like Facebook Messenger group chats for specific classes. I'm sure everyone here might have experienced it throughout COVID times, but that's something that was developed so that everyone can kind of stay in the loop when it comes to class specific groups. This can be talking about kind of like whether class is canceled today, making sure that deadlines are what it actually is, or actually even asking general questions regarding topics where you can actually get help on certain assignments or whatnot. Obviously, you're not allowed to cheat and ask for exact answers, but it's nice to get some general understanding kind of from those specific groups. So Facebook Messenger and Facebook is a big one today.
And I'm seeing some nods and approvals from everybody else. So it seems to be the way across the board. So not just in management, but just generally in courses. We can jump back to that if there's anything, but as I said, looking at the time, there's a specific, this is for the well-being part of McGill and being a McGill student. I'd like to talk about the Student Wellness Hub. So this is something that the name itself is somewhat new-ish to the university, sort of the refoundation of a lot of departments coming together and servicing our students. And so I'd like to just highlight what is there. So our incoming students have an idea, you don't have to say everything that the Student Wellness Hub does, but maybe some of your own experience of why maybe you went there or what you know about the hub. So maybe we could start with Ariel. What are your thoughts, or what do you know about the Student Wellness Hub?
Yeah, well, the Student Wellness Hub is the central place for a lot of McGill's health and wellness services. I guess two main experience or aspects of it I've had is they have appointments with doctors or nurses at the hub. So you can make a same-day appointment, and it's helpful, especially for out-of-province students, because they do out-of-province billing, so you don't have to pay or deal with your provincial insurance. The second part is the Healthy Living Annex. And the Healthy Living Annex is a section in the Student Wellness Hub, and they host different workshops on wellness. My favorite workshop is animal therapy. They bring dogs there about once a week, and you can go and pet dogs and just relieve some stress. Another thing they have there is the Shag Shop, which is a place where you can purchase discounted sexual wellness items.
And Vivi, I know yourself as well. You have some experience with either Student Wellness Hub or even other health support, like maybe OSD.
Yeah, I have been to the Student Wellness Hub before, but in the interest of time, I can talk about the OSD instead. So the Office for Students with Disabilities encompasses a lot of things, but the part that I'm involved with is a peer mentoring service they have set up. So one of the volunteering things that I do and that I love is being a peer mentor for the Office for Students with Disabilities. So students that are registered with the office have the opportunity to be paired with another student, for instance, me, and I meet with my mentee 1 to 2 times a week, and I support them with a variety of academic and wellness goals. So kind of what we've been talking about the whole time, but for instance, perhaps if someone is struggling with organization, I can discuss with them different ways to stay organized, and we can try out different methods. I can again tell them great parks to go run in. We can talk about clubs, and basically it's just a really good way to check in. And I really value the personal connections that I've been able to make through the service. Of course, a mentee-mentor relationship isn't really a friendship, but it's a really nice way to build a relationship, and it makes me feel great, and I really value the connections, and I would like to hope that my mentees feel the same way.
I'm sure they do. So we have a couple minutes left, and all of you have shared a lot of talking points already, and I know there's more to say, but I would sort of the challenge, I guess, in these last couple minutes, if you can spend 30 seconds to a minute of just saying, is there another McGill thing that you haven't had a chance to talk about that you want to highlight? It doesn't necessarily have to be a club that you created, but something, a McGill service, a McGill club, or a McGill thing that exists that you want to make known to everybody on the call today. So we'll start with Yuki. What's the thing that you'd like to highlight that hasn't been said already?
So there is McGill Nightline, which is a non-judgmental peer support platform. Like when you are in a mental breakdown or like you have a lot of issues with your life, you can just call them during the night and there will be another peer paired with you and they will just actively listening to you, and it's totally non-judgmental and confidential.
Thank you for that. Jamie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so CAPS, which is Career and Planning Services, is one of my favorite tools on campus. I feel like you're always going to go through a period of questioning what exactly you want to do with your degree at some point in your university experience, and they're really great for providing support, even mentoring services with accomplished professionals in the field, or CV, cover letter, interview prep as well. Also, the library has different library techs for different departments or faculties that are happy to assist you in finding sources or organizing sources. And a lot of upper level classes will have workshops from their designated individual at the library to explain how to use the McGill library tool, for example, because it's a beast once you first see it, but once you get used to it, writing papers becomes a lot easier. Lastly, when you're looking for summer jobs or internships, LinkedIn is your best friend for connecting with individuals in university around seeing different job postings, but also McGill, My Future, which is a McGill tool. You can create an account and they host a lot of career development workshops, but they also have a lot of postings from organizations that you wouldn't find on Indeed. And I actually found a volunteer research position that I did for 1.5 years on there. That was quite a great experience. So I would definitely vouch for that as well.
Perfect. Woo, do you have a thing that hasn't been mentioned yet that you'd like to share?
Yeah, mine would definitely have to be the Ask McGill tent. That's usually outside in a couple places, kind of at the Y, as well as in front of Bronfman at the start of kind of for a week or so at the start of every semester. So it's a tent where there's a couple of people standing there and a few brochures as well, where, you know, like pretty self-explanatory. It's Ask McGill. They're there to help answer any kind of questions you have, whether it may be, hey, where's this building, or where do you think I can get this kind of service from? That was very useful for me. They also gave me a free water bottle and a drawstring bag at the start of the year that I still use today.
A free water bottle. Okay, well, looking forward to that. Ariel, do you want to go next? Oh, maybe frozen. Oh no, came back. Sorry, Ariel, do you want to go next? There's one last thing you want to share. Sorry.
Oh, I'm going to plug the Stay on Track program. So the Stay on Track program is where you're partnered with an academic student coach for one-on-one sessions, and it's open to students from every faculty. And during these sessions, you work with your coach to help build your learning, organizational, and wellness skills, work on goal setting. And that's really tailored to you and what you want to achieve as a student. I participated in it as a student and as a student coach, and I felt it was really valuable for me.
I'm glad I didn't have to plug it again. Thank you for doing that. And Vimy, if there's one last thing you'd like to share with the guests.
I really recommend walking on the mountain in the fall. It's very beautiful. That's all.
That's great. So we have a couple minutes left, and I know some of us do need to depart right away at 7:30, but I'll sort of end with a concluding thought here, and I'll let all of our panelists sort of give one last thought as well. But my last thing that I'd like to share, because I do share this with all students who come to McGill, is you've been accepted, you were accepted, you've chosen McGill to be here. And so that means McGill as an institution knows that you have the tools to succeed and to have success. But that doesn't mean you're a finished product, or else why are you coming to university if you think you're already the finished product? So what we try to highlight is, you're allowed to add things to your toolbox. Just because you had success in the past, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to add things, add tips, tricks, and learn from others to continue that success as a university student. So just know, if you stumble, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means you get a chance to recover from that and learn something new from that. So that's sort of advice that I like to share. But in concluding thoughts from our panelists, if you'd like to just leave all of our incoming students, your future colleagues in about a month, in a couple of weeks, that you will see walking around campus. If you want to share one concluding sentence, let's see, who do we want to start with? Let's start with Vimy this time.
I think it's really important to know that everyone in first year wants to make friends. So don't be afraid to just talk to people. Everyone's figuring out what kind of person they want to be at McGill. So just talk to people and yeah, don't be scared of trying to make friends.
Great advice. And Jamie?
Make sure to enjoy the ride, try new things, but also go to class.
Again, if parents are on the call, they definitely appreciate that. Woo?
Mine would certainly be like, yeah, like Vimy said, talk to people. Here in Canada or in Montreal, from my personal experience at least, people are incredibly welcoming. People are nice. You'll make friends in no time, and I'm sure you'll have a blast doing it. So enjoy the city, enjoy the school, enjoy it with friends, enjoy it with people.
And Yuki, our graduate on the panel.
Thank you. Don't be scared and be confident because you're worthy, and I hope you can enjoy McGill.
Inspiring. And Ariel?
I'd say just know yourself, know your strengths. You have all these resources at your fingertips, so take the time to find goals and that work for you, clubs that you're interested in, to really make the most out of your experience that's tailored to you.
Wonderful. So I want to take this moment to thank all the panelists who've taken their time out of their evening to join us. I know some of you have other commitments. As you've all heard, they're all doing all sorts of things. And I know it's still the summer, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing all amazing things in the summer right now. I know they're all very busy with internships or jobs or volunteering, whatever it may be, preparing for their upcoming semester. So thank you again to the 5 panelists who've been here today and shared your experience. I know some of you shared contact information, and I'm sure you will continue to share your wisdom as you continue to be a McGill student. And I want to thank again Chris and Clay for setting this all up to give them a chance to share their experience with all of you. I hope all of you can get something out of this. And to note that there are a bunch of other events coming up and orientation week as well to learn more and discover more. So thanks again for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. A lot of happy people in chat. That's great. A recording will be up in a couple days on the Get Ready website. You'll find it there. So thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Nick, for getting everything ready for these students. Have a wonderful night. I'm going to close the room. Goodbye, everyone.